understood them.
Good morning. Is there sound? I can't. Is anybody speaking? Is there sound? Am I audible?
Good morning, ma'am. Yes, you're clearly audible. There won't be any sound yet because we will only start at 10, but you're perfectly audible.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning, ma'am. We can hear you clearly.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Good
thanks.
morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm fine.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, you're perfectly clear. We can hear you. We
Oh.
will be starting in a few minutes.
Okay,
Oh, thank you.
but
Right.
okay. Unmute.
Recording in progress.
Honourable members, I welcome all members who have logged into the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honourable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. And lastly, I would like to remind you that we are meeting in a mini plenary session, and therefore any decisions will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. The first item on the order paper for this morning is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable P P Nxaba-Ntshaba on professionalising the public service, improving frontline services, and resolving the problem of the mismatch of skills. The Honourable Nxaba-Ntshaba.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm audible. I'm
Yes,
audible.
Honourable Member, you are.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to talk about this issue of professionalization in our public service in the government. The question we must ask ourselves is that, what does it mean to be a public servant? Kusho ukuthini ukuba ngumsebenzi kahulumeni? In 1997, the founding father of our nation, Ubaba uNelson Mandela, introduced the Batupili initiative for the public service. Mandela's intention was to Mandela's intention with the initiative was to include the African traditional value system in the public service. Ubaba wesizwe uTata Mandela wasifundisa ukuthi yini ubuntu nokuthi abantu kumele baziphathe kanjani uma besebenzisana nabanye abantu, ikakhulukazi ezikhungweni, ikakhulukazi ezizindeni zikahulumeni.
Especially in government.
Lokho kwaze kwadala ukuthi uhulumeni ahlinzeke abasebenzi bakhe ngesikolo sikazwelonke,
Which then meant the government had to give people government school to teach and train people under regulations.
Nokuziphatha kwabasebenzi bakahulumeni kuwo wonke amazinga akhona ngezigaba zawo kuyo yonke.
Honourable Nxaba-Ntshaba, please just refrain from, well, just pause a minute. I have a hand raised by the Honourable Skosana. Yes, Honourable Skosana.
Yes, the speaker, there's some other person, not sure whether it's an interpreter, but is stating, no, we are listening to the honourable member and somebody's busy on the other side. Maybe he should mute because there's two sounds.
Honourable Skosana, I struggle to hear you. Your connection is not very good, but I think I get the gist of the matter. We will just assist the interpreter because, yes, I think we got the gist that the isiZulu interpreter was on the wrong channel, so it then also influenced, interfered with the speaker at the podium. We will fix that now. Thank you, Honourable Skosana. Honourable Skosana, unfortunately, I can't hear you. Honourable Skosana, you are breaking up.
There's two people talking. I'm saying there's two people talking. Whenever I'm speaking, there's somebody speaking.
Honourable Nxaba-Ntshaba, I'll deal with you now. Honourable Skosana, you are not at all audible. I can unfortunately not hear what you are saying. I can hear all the others, but your connection is not very good. Honourable Nxaba-Ntshaba.
Yes.
Please just give me a minute so that we, yes, please just give me a minute so that we just deal with this matter. Could I just confirm with the table that the interpreter will now be on the correct channel? If not, then I would propose that we rather let the speaker speak because we can't hear it interferes. So it is important that the Honourable Ntshaba-Ntshaba proceeds with her speech. Please proceed, Honourable Member.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Akugcinanga lapho, lesi sikolo siphinde sihlinzeke ngolwazi kubasebenzi abasebenzela ohulumeni basemakhaya kanye nasezifundazweni ukubaqeqesha wokuthi uma kufika umkhulu omdala noma ugogo ezofuna usizo eminyangweni kahulumeni kumele babaphathe kanjani. Hayi lento eyenzeke ukuthi umntwana omncane uma ugogo ebuza amthathe ambhekisele abanye ogogo bagcine benqala nokuya eminyangweni kahulumeni. As the ANC-led government, we encourage that all government workers must put people first and sacrifice all for the people of this country. That will encourage good governance, the vibrant economy, increase production, education, and training. It will also ensure a healthy nation. This school is catered for public servant in all spheres of government. Ukusebenza ngabantu kudinga umuntu onesineke, owazi ukuthi umuntu ngumuntu ngabanye abantu. Lokho kusho ukubekezelelana ngokwamasiko ethu sonke kulelizwe. Ngabe awezenkolo, ngabe awezanuse, ngabe ubulili kanye nokungacwasani ngokwebala. Our constitution grants us a bill of right and encourage Batupili principles. We encourage our public servant to make use of this school of government to promote good ethics at work, professionalism, a good code of conduct, exercising oversight, and performing monitoring and evaluation. We please senior managers to ensure that their subordinates are utilizing all government institutions to be in line with a national agenda. Government and the public must work together. They must cooperate as our government promotes inclusion to rebuild this nation to achieve a purpose of our national democratic revolution. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, our people come from all walks of life, cultural background, and traditions. Therefore, the public servant must know their client and treat them with respect and dignity. In return, the public must treat the public servant with respect. During the public's visit to the government institution, they must apply Batupili principles to cater to different cultures, norms, and beliefs. Example, a pregnant woman and a woman carries a minor child, or a widow who is mourning must be served with care and understanding of their situation. This is a practice of placing people first. Government workers must always act professionally in any situation in the public sector. They must allow to be criticized for them to improve their work. And the answer with respect and address the issues of service delivery immediately. Honorable Speaker, uhulumeni wethu ubonisa ngakho konke ukuthi ubathanda kangakanani abantu bezwe lakhe. Njengoba uhulumeni evezele isikolo sokuqeqesha abantu abasebenza kuhulumeni, abasebenzi bakahulumeni. Ubonisa ngakho konke ukuthi
Honorable member, your time has expired. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you. The next speaker is from the MK. We have not received a name at the table. So is there anyone from the MK who will take this slot?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's Vispan Reddy from MK Party.
Please proceed.
The single biggest problem confronting South Africa today is the problem of unemployment. If you look at it, a father and a mother have to go through the pain of watching their children go to bed hungry because there is no food in the house. Children wake up hungry and have to go to school without having a meal. Hunger makes it impossible for the child to concentrate in school. Eventually, the family disintegrates as children as young as 10 years old leave the household to go and fend for themselves. Often, they resort to a life of crime. They resort to drug and alcohol abuse to dull the pain of depravity, to deal with their protracted encounter with hopelessness. Repeated imprisonment eventually makes them to see prison as a place of refuge, a place where they can get food and shelter. At the heart of the dysfunction of South African society is the problem of unemployment. There is a significant skills mismatch in the labor market. Many job seekers, especially young people, lack the necessary skills for the jobs available in sectors like manufacturing, technology, or services. This is exacerbated by an education system that often fails to equip young people with the skills required for the modern economy. The South African economy, while growing, has not been growing at a rate high enough to create the number of jobs required. Even during periods of economic recovery, the growth rate has been insufficient to make a significant dent in the unemployment rate. Additionally, automation and technological changes in some industries have made certain jobs obsolete, creating an even greater challenge for job creation. Unfortunately for South Africa, the so-called GNU does not have a response to this problem. There is no vision, there is no plan. The National Development Plan has missed almost all of its targets. The most important target of creating jobs and reducing unemployment is hopelessly out of the window, and there is no chance that it will be met by 2030. The unemployment rate currently sits at 32% against an NDP target of 6% by 2030. The apartheid demon is also manifest in our unemployment. According to Stats South Africa, unemployment for whites is only 7%, while unemployment among blacks sits at a staggering 37%. Madam Deputy Speaker, parties like the Freedom Front, the DA, and the World Bank that are key partners in the so-called GNU have called on the government to abandon Black economic empowerment. One can only conclude that they would like to see the deepening of inequality in South Africa with the assistance of our erstwhile liberation movement. Remember, South Africa has been declared as one of the most unequal societies in the world. The tragedy, however, is that despite this reality, of a grotesquely high unemployment rate. This DNA ANC-led coalition has not even revised its unemployment targets to be more realistic. The National Development Plan has simply ceased to matter. There have been delays in the finalization of the medium-term development plan. We have been to since before Christmas that this is almost ready, we've been promised. The tragedy, however, is that the Minister of Finance attempted to deliver a budget in the absence of a credible plan, an endeavor that can only mean disaster. For without a plan, other than the proverbial thumb suck, what will inform the numbers that will come out of the budget? Sadly, another attempt will be made on the 12th of March, 2025 by the Minister of Finance to accomplish this foolish fate of presenting a national budget that is not based on any plan or vision. Historically, Madam Deputy Speaker, South Africa has never experienced double-digit economic growth. The highest rate of growth recorded in South Africa was 7% in the mid-1960s, at the height of apartheid and Afrikaners nationalism. The highest post-apartheid economic growth was 4.2%, achieved in 2005. The reality for South Africa is that without significant structural changes to the economy, double-digit growth will continue to be elusive. The MK party believes that through radical economic transformation and restructuring, it is possible to propel this economy into double-digit growth. The sectors that should be targeted for structural change are the mining and commodities sector. South Africa remains one of the world's largest producers of minerals, particularly platinum, gold, and diamonds. The mining sector is a cornerstone of the economy, accounting for a significant portion of both GDP and export revenues. However, the mining sector has faced several challenges in recent years: decreasing mineral reserves, infrastructure constraints, global price volatility. Opportunities for greater participation of small emerging miners have to be created. Targeted reining of the previously disadvantaged must be implemented with a view to both reducing unemployment and increasing productivity in the mining sector. The next sector is agriculture. Agriculture, Madam Deputy Speaker and fellow colleagues, remains important, especially in rural areas where it is a primary source of employment. South Africa is a global player in citrus and wine exports, particularly to the European Union and United States. However, agriculture faces challenges like climate change, land reform issues, and water scarcity. Unpredictable weather patterns, such as droughts or floods, can severely impact crop yields and food security. South Africa's agriculture sector has been undergoing land reform policies intended to redress historical inequalities in land ownership. While land reform is a necessity, the implementation has been slow and has sparked concerns over potential negative impacts on productivity and investment. We believe, as MK, that the implementation of land redistribution through a policy of expropriation without compensation, accompanied by massive training and extension services, will improve our agricultural input. The next sector is the manufacturing and industry. South Africa's manufacturing sector has been under pressure for some time. High production costs, aging infrastructure, and declining competitiveness have led to stagnation. However, South Africa has had an advantage in certain industries, like the automotive manufacturing industry. Companies like Toyota, Volkswagen, and BMW have large production plants in South Africa, and the sector has seen exports grow. With training and focused planning and deliberate measures to empower the Black majority, it is possible to fundamentally change our fortunes and use manufacturing as a key engine for growth. Partnerships with key BRICS countries presents tremendous opportunities. The services sector is the largest contributor to South Africa's GDP, driven by finance, telecommunications, retail, and real estate. South Africa's financial services industry is one of the most developed in Africa, with Johannesburg being a hub for banking and financial services. this sector remains strong, although some risks like policy uncertainty and economic volatility continue to affect investor confidence. Sadly, after 30 years, it remains untransformed and continues to display unwillingness to transform. The tourism sector before the COVID-19 pandemic was a significant contributor to employment and GDP. While there has been some recovery post-pandemic, the sector is still facing challenges like global travel restrictions and competition from other emerging markets. Decisive policies to transform these sectors through a government-led program should enable the majority Black population to be part of the mainstream economic activities. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, although the South African government knows and recognizes the need for structural reforms to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth, there has been slow progress and there is an absent political will to do what is necessary for employment creation and growth. The MK Party calls on all parties in this House to join us in the call for accelerating job creation in South Africa, because through jobs, people will once again be able to get their dignity that they deserve, which is one of the key pillars of the MK's People's Mandate. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Reddy. And the next speaker in our debate on professionalising the public service is the Honourable Tikana Kotiwe.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Good morning to honourable members. In the State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa has this to say, I quote, "Our most urgent task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty and improve the lives of all South Africans. To undertake this task, we need a government that works for the people. We need a state that is capable, underpinned by a professional public service. South Africans want a state that treats all people with dignity, humanity, and respect. A state with leaders who are prepared to serve our people with complete dedication and public servants who are ethical, skilled, and properly qualified," close quote. The president has reinforced the ANC 55th National Congress commitment to building a developmental state that provides effective basic services with capabilities to take forward a far-reaching agenda on national economic development, whilst at the same time placing people and their involvement at the center of this process. These clarion calls from both SONA and Congress resolutions requires the government that is responsive to the needs of the people, accountable and ability to think the prism of individuality, but beyond self to take the country forward. Despite the existence of a sophisticated policy structure that underpins professionalism in the South African public sector, the challenge of unprofessional behavior, as evidenced by the number of corruption cases, maladministration, and fruitless expenditures, is a cause for serious worry. The Constitution of 1996 clearly states that public administration must maintain a high level of professionalism. The Constitution of 1996 urged public personnel to be professional, accountable, and developmental oriented. This was further reinforced by the National Development Plan Vision 2030, which expects the public to follow established norms, while a significant proportion of public officials hold professional qualifications. The level of professionalization in the public sector is a source of concern. The National Development Plans provides a vision of the 2020 South African public service, what it can do, deliver, care, and serve. It is a vision of a just public administration that meets the needs of all citizens in South Africa. The vision is professional, outcome-oriented, developmental focused, effectual, and effective. The NDP identifies the critical interventions for securing a more capable state. These include stabilizing the political administration interface, professionalization, and developing the required skills. Skills alignment to improve the image of the state and improve its capacity and capability to serve the public is essential to mitigate the recurring of fruitless expenditure and maladministration among municipalities, flagged repeatedly by the Auditor General. The Auditor General always points to the skills mismatch encountered in senior management position. The professionalization framework introduced a pool of technical experts to oversee that the recruitment processes are fair and meet the criteria of the candidate. Taking lessons from the Zondo Commission report, it identified the public procurement system as the principal source of the stealing of state resources and proposed measures to improve its integrity. The lack of comprehensive procurement legislation has led to abuse and insufficient oversight, and the government should address this issue. Honorable members, through the establishment of a professionalization framework and an independent public procurement anti-corruption agency and a permanent anti-corruption commission will be established. Structures like this will work closely with the National School of Government in building anti-corruption capacity, as well as with the Public Administration Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistant Unit with the DPSA on norms and standards. This will ensure that the procurement process system will be tightened and prevent the access for corrupt elements. Honorable members, the 6th ANC-led government has made meaningful strides in institutionalizing the framework. Departments and entities already embedded the professionalization as the annual performance plan, and it appeared in their medium-term development plan with professionalization smart plans to 2024-2027. The panel of experts are being registered by Public Service Commission to deal with the issues of recruitment process and combating crime at National School of Government, enrolling public servants to programs such as Ethics and Public Finance Management Act is ongoing. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, local government is at coalface of public service delivery and prey to rampant corruption and maladministration. The recruitment of this suited candidate for the management of local government will go a long way in solidifying leadership, transparency, and accountability in that sector. The professionalization framework has no place for nepotism. In conclusion, Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me remind this House. The ANC is the principal architect of the transformative constitutional democratic order in our country. A democracy with South African characteristics wherein the state is accountable and accountable of improving the quality of life of all citizens. As a leader of society, even in these trying times, the ANC is committed to building an ethical, capable, and developmental state and improving service delivery to our citizens. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Our next speaker is the Honourable Potgieter.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This week, an article in Business Day highlighted the economic crossroads South Africa is facing, with some proposing a 2% VAT hike as a solution to the crisis of reckless government expenditure and a complete lack of accountability within the public service. When you stop and think about it, it's hard to understand why any political party or any member of the public would support such a misguided proposal that places the blame for government inefficiency on the very people who elected them. Where is the justice, care, or responsibility in such a proposal? As the Democratic Alliance, we have always been strong advocates for a professionalized public service that puts the people first, with dignity, honesty, and accountability. We are committed to ending cadre deployment and restoring the efficiency and integrity of public institutions. Professionalizing the public service isn't just an administrative goal, it's an economic imperative essential. It would eliminate practices such as unauthorized, irregular, and wasteful expenditure, which is estimated at a whopping 165 billion rand annually across all government spheres, according to the Auditor General's reports from 2019 to 2023. By improving accountability, skills, leadership, and management, we can significantly reduce this financial wastage. In fact, the savings from a truly professionalized public service would far outweigh the potential benefits of a 2% VAT increase, estimated to generate only 58 billion rand annually, achieving a much longer-term value for the country. I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate our chairperson, Jan de Villiers, on the unanimous adoption of the Public Service Commission Bill by the Public Service Committee this week. This bill is a crucial step forward in professionalizing the public service. It ensures merit-based recruitment and training, leading to a more skilled and competent public service. It strengthens leadership and management to prevent inefficiencies and misallocation of resources. It fosters a culture of integrity and responsibility, reducing corruption and waste. It implements better budget management, transparency, and performance metrics to ensure the efficient use of public funds. And it empowers the Public Service Commission to enhance oversight and tackle poor performance. As highlighted by the PSC Commission, every 1 million rand spent on addressing deficiencies within government could yield a return of 10 million rand. It is crucial that every department prioritizes this pillar of the GNU. After all, it is the cornerstone for the success of all other government priorities. Without it, nothing will succeed. Sadly, we see the lack of prioritization in several areas. The Department of Public Service and Administration, for example, can't provide accurate figures for suspended employees. The discrepancies in reported numbers over 140 million rand for April to June 2024 from the Forsat report versus 118 million from Persol over a 5-year period are largely due to poor reporting by departments. This will not be solved by the DPSA's intention to implement a live case management system. We also see delays in implementing the skills audit, a lack of focus on addressing critical skills shortages, particularly in engineering and the built environment, and inadequate monitoring of competency frameworks to identify skills gaps. Moreover, there are ongoing issues such as doctors claiming overtime for clinic visits they've never made, leading to increased medical legal claims. I welcome the commitment indicated to the committee by the DG of the DPSA in further engaging all departments on the professionalisation framework to once again stress the vital role of this pillar in ensuring our government works for its people and not the other way around. While we've seen progress in specific portfolios under the GNU, this needs to be reflected across all government departments, as well as in provincial and local spheres. I'd like to highlight a few examples. In Home Affairs, over 50% of the visa backlog has been cleared, equating to more than 300,000 visas. Minister Nxaba is committed to reinforcing the Counter-Corruption and Security Services branch to tackle corruption and restore public trust, along with implementing technology-driven reforms to improve efficiency and service delivery. Minister Dean McPherson in Public Works has made significant strides in professionalising the public service by conducting a skills audit, filling critical vacancies and tightening financial oversight, including revoking officials' ability to authorise expenditure of up to 20 million rand without approval. He's also improved governance by placing the Prestige units under the Director General's oversight, implementing stricter auditing processes, and collaborating with the AG to address failures. Minister Malatsi has led efforts to enhance public service efficiency and accessibility by launching the Broadband and Digital Skills Programme to equip municipal leaders with digital expertise. This has contributed to South Africa's rise in the UNE Government Development Index to 40th in 2024. Minister John Steenhuisen in Agriculture has advocated for public-private partnerships, legislative reforms, and improved working conditions for agricultural professionals. He also supports small-scale farmers by integrating them into larger value chains, aiming for a more professional, efficient, and sustainable agricultural sector. In basic education, Minister Khurube has worked to professionalise the public service within the ministry by advocating for accountability, transparency, and improved governance. She supports policies that enhance teacher training, career pathways, and oversight mechanisms to strengthen the education sector. And in conservation, Minister Dion George has focused on enhancing support for rangers and securing alternative funding for conservation programs. He's driven the implementation of the Climate Change Act and streamlined processes for renewable energy projects. Madam Deputy Speaker, while we acknowledge the positive steps being taken in these areas, we must ensure that such progress is reflected across all government departments. The professionalisation of the public service must be a priority for every department, at every level of government, if we are truly to achieve an efficient and accountable state. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And the next speaker is the Honourable Kilishe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address once again painted a picture of a South Africa that exists only in rhetoric, not in reality, a kind of utopia that exists only in his mind. While he spoke of a capable and competent state, dedicated leaders, ethical and skilled public servants, these words ring hollow in the face of the systematic failures that continue to plague our public service. The EFF has long maintained that the DA-ANC-led government lacks the political will to address the root causes of inefficiency, endemic corruption, and incompetency in the public sector. Ramaphosa's SONA was yet another missed opportunity to present concrete and actionable solutions to these problems. Deputy Speaker, the time for empty rhetoric is over. What South Africa needs is a radical overhaul of the public service, underpinned by accountability, ethical leadership, and continuous professional development. Ramaphosa spoke of a state that is capable and competent, but the reality is that the Department of Public Service and Administration has failed to implement systems that track public service delivery matrix across all government departments. Without these systems, there is no way to hold public servants accountable for the quality of service they provide. This lack of accountability perpetuates inefficiency and undermines trust in government institutions. The EFF has consistently advocated for the performance-based system that rewards high performers and imposes consequences for underperformers. Such systems would incentivize public servants to work towards a clear and measurable outcomes and benefit citizens. Ramaphosa also spoke of leaders who are prepared to serve our people with complete dedication and public servants who are ethical, skilled, and qualified. Yet corruption and unethical behavior remain endemic in public service. The lack of a comprehensive ethics program within DPSA has allowed misconduct to flourish with little to no consequence for those who abuse their positions. Deputy Speaker, the EFF proposes the establishment of a robust public service ethics program that includes regular ethics training, internal audits, and anonymous whistleblowing platforms. Ethics training should be mandatory for all public servants, with a focus on practical scenarios that highlight the consequences of unethical behavior. Internal audits should be conducted regularly to identify and address potential areas of corruption, while an anonymous whistleblowing platform would empower public servants to report misconduct without fear of retaliation. The DPSA must establish mechanisms to enforce ethical behavior within the public service. This could include the creation of an independent ethics oversight body with the power to investigate allegations of corruption and impose sanctions on those found guilty. This approach will weave a fabric of trust through unwavering commitment of anti-corruption measures. In that way, inject new ethos into the public sector. Ramaphosa's vision of professional service is undermined by the lack of investment in continuous professional development for public servants. In a rapidly changing world where technology and service needs are constantly evolving, it is essential that public servants are equipped with the skills and knowledge to meet these challenges and sensibilities. Unfortunately, the current system does not provide adequate opportunities for professional growth, leaving many public servants ill-prepared to handle demands of their roles. The EFF believes that the National School of Government must play a leading role in addressing these gaps as well as mismatch of skills. The school should collaborate with universities to offer relevant training programs in leadership, project management, technology, and citizen-centric service delivery. These programs should be designed to equip public servants with skills they need to perform in their role effectively and adapt to changing circumstances. Lastly, Deputy Speaker, President Ramaphosa's SONA was yet another exercise in wishful thinking, devoid of any concrete plans to address the systemic failures of the public service. The EFF, on the other hand, offers a clear and actionable vision for transforming the public service into a capable, ethical, and professional institution that meet the needs of our people. South Africa deserves a public service that delivers on its mandate, with public servants who are held accountable for their actions. The EFF calls on government to adopt our proposals and take meaningful steps towards building the state that is truly capable, competent, and dedicated to the people it serves. We don't need empty SONA speeches. We need tangible action to turn the public service around. Manje namhlanje. Thank you, Deputy.
Member. We now proceed to the next speaker, the Honorable Langa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The IFP champions a cause that is central to the prosperity and well-being of our nation, which is professionalization of the public service. It is no secret that the efficiency and effectiveness of government services have a profound impact on the daily lives of our citizens. We firmly believe that by improving frontline services and addressing the mismatch of skills in the public administration, we can restore dignity, trust, and excellence in governance. As the IFP, we hold the dear principle of servant leadership, accountability, and meritocracy. Our commitment to professionalizing the public service is guided by the fundamental principle that government exists to serve the people, not the other way around. It was the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, our esteemed leader, who once said, open quote, "Public service is not a privilege, but a solemn duty to serve communities with dedication, honesty, and professionalism," close quote. These guiding ethos remain at the heart of our vision for an efficient and capable state. A professional public service must be built on the foundation of competence, ethical leadership, and continuous learning. The IFP recognizes that many government departments suffer from a skills mismatch where individuals are placed in the roles that do not align with their qualifications or expertise. This results in inefficiency, corruption, and ultimately the failure to deliver quality services to the people. In this regard, we implore the government to consider the following. One, reskilling and upskilling public servants. As the IFP, we propose investing in continuous training and development as a crucial tool to bridging the skills gap within the public sector. We propose targeted capacity building programs that will equip public servants with the necessary skills to perform their duties efficiently. This includes digital literacy training, financial management courses, and leadership development programs. We must foster a culture of continuous learning to ensure that our workforce remains adaptable to the ever-evolving needs of the society. Number two, implementation of the Batupili principles. The Batupili principles are not mere guidelines, but an obligation of every public servant. As the IFP, we demand that government officials uphold consultation, service excellence, and transparency in their daily operations. We demand that every civil servant pledge to treat citizens with dignity, resolve grievances promptly, and improve service delivery through proactive engagements. Number three, merit-based appointments and performance accountability. We advocate for a strict merit-based recruitment process to eliminate nepotism, cadre deployment, and inefficiency. Public servants must be hired based on their skills, experience, and qualifications. In acknowledging progress, we take this moment to commend the Minister of Public Services and Administration, the Honorable Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, for recognizing the agency of this transformation. Under his leadership, significant strides have been made to improve service delivery and enforce accountability. The IFP pledges its full support to furthering these efforts and ensuring that professional ethics, competence, and citizen satisfaction remain the guiding pillars of our public service. Together, let us build a public service that works for the people, capable, ethical, and developmental state, and a professional public service. Ngiyathokoza kakhulu. Thank you.
Thank you, Langa. The next on the list is a speaker from the PA, but we have not received a name, so I don't know. I see Honorable Van Wyk is on the platform. Is there a speaker for the PA? If not, we then proceed. The Honorable Denner.
Speaker. Speaker.
Honorable Van Wyk.
Yes, Speaker. Thank you very much. But unfortunately, I have to submit that there was no name submitted to me, and I don't want to speak out of my own, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We then continue with the Honourable Denner.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the subject of professionalisation of the public service is not a new one, though it seems the Honourable already missed it this morning. We've had numerous debates and declarations in this House bemoaning the state of the public service and the quality of service it renders to South Africans. Has it improved? Will it improve? And why has the question been asked, is the public service in the state that it is in? It's important to answer this question, Deputy Speaker, so the root cause of the problem of poor public service can be identified. You cannot fix something if you don't know what's wrong with it. But we do know what's wrong with it. We've known for years, even though the ANC government refused to admit as much. Cadet deployment, especially during the 9 missing Zuma years, incompetence, poor management, non-existent consequence management, an overall lack of good practice and standards, a lack of proper work ethic, a bloated public service with an even more bloated public service wage bill, and the absolute lack of the political will to change the status quo has all contributed to getting the public service to a place where we have to yet again discuss the fact that the public service of South Africa is in need of professionalisation. We even have an ANC member, the first speaker in the debate, asking for cooperation from the private sector with a so-called ANC-led government. So let me just assist the honourable member. As from May 2024, this government is a government of national unity, not an ANC-led government. And on that note, I'm very glad that I don't have the minister's job, having to fix something that has been broken by the ANC over the course of 30 years. We commend him for that. Agbare adjunkspeaker, die heersende gesprek in Suid-Afrika is die begroting en hoe die minister van Finansies dit gaan laat klop. Een van die onaanvaarbare planne is om die BTW-koers met 2% te verhoog, juis om onder meer die staatsdiens salarisrekening te diens. Die staat betaal reeds hoër as normale salarisse en ken jaarliks hoër as die normverhogings toe. Ons hoef nie vir mekaar te sê dat die staatsdiens salarisrekening 'n reuse probleem is nie. Ons weet dit ook. Ernstige strukturele hervormings in die staatsdienspersoneelkorps is nodig. Helaas en ongelukkig, omdat die ANC vir 30 jaar in plaas daarvan om 'n werkskepper te wees, 'n werkgewer was, weens sy eie onvermoë. Hierdie hervormings moet dan insluit die vul van kritieke vakatures in veral die gesondheidsorg en onderwysdepartemente om die mense van Suid-Afrika beter te dien. Ten spyte van die feit dat daar 102.000 vakante gefinansierde poste in die staatsdiens is daar steeds 23 miljard rand nodig om die verhogings van die staatsdiens salarisse te finansier. Dis 'n nimmer eindigende siklus wat Suid-Afrika in die grond in gaan boor as daar nie groot, daadwerklike strukturele veranderinge op 'n dringende basis gemaak gaan word nie. Waar is die vaardighede die heel nodigste? Waar het die mense van Suid-Afrika vaardige, vriendelike, doelgerigte, behoorlike staatsdiensdienste die nodigste en waar kan die vet gesny word om die staatsdiens vaartbelyn te maak om effektief en behoorlik te funksioneer? Ons staatsdiens en administrasieprobleem moet soos 'n smetterige ontsteekte wond benader word. Die vrot moet weggesny word. Dit gaan seer wees, baie, maar eers dan sal die wond gesond kan word tot waar die staatsdiens kleiner, meer effektief is, waar die salarisrekening onder beheer is en waar staatsdiensamptenare ondersteun en bemagtig, maar ook verantwoordbaar gehou word om hulle werk en diens aan Suid-Afrika behoorlik te doen. Voordat hierdie wond nie gesond is nie, sal ons aanhou om in hierdie huis oor die professionalisering van die staatsdiens te praat, maar agbare adjunk speaker, dit sal net by woorde bly. Ek dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Greetings to you and to the rest of the South Africa that is joining us on the online platforms. Madam Deputy Speaker, the October 2022 National Framework towards the Professionalisation of the Public Service set out a clear, ambitious goal. to build a state that better serves the people, insulated from undue political interference where appointments are made on merit. It further emphasized that the public service must be nonpartisan and that government departments must be shielded from politics, stressing that professionalization is essential for stability, particularly in senior ranks. Yet, as we stand in 2025, that framework has amounted to little more than words on paper that is gathering dust, while the public service remains deeply entangled in political appointments. The recent turmoil surrounding the appointment of the new SAA CEO is a glaring example of how allegedly politically aligned individuals continue to be prioritized over qualified professionals. See, while endless discussions, conferences, and policy frameworks may give the illusion of progress, their true value lies in tangible reforms, of which, Madam Speaker, unfortunately, are very few. No one can seriously claim that much has changed when a significant portion of public servants remain in positions that they're either unqualified for or have secured through political connections rather than merit. And this is precisely why Action SA has consistently maintained that every state institution must operate free from political interference and cadre deployment. These institutions exist to serve the people of South Africa, not to function as vehicles for a truly professional public service is one where competence, accountability, and service delivery take precedence over political loyalty. Until this becomes a reality, any framework on professionalization remains an exercise in rhetoric rather than true reform. It is vital that we must modernize and streamline our state institutions and build a dynamic, professional, and service-oriented public sector that is staffed by capable civil servants. But ultimately, the state's goal should be to provide services and foster an environment that is necessary for socioeconomic prosperity and upward mobility of our people, rather than being directly involved in job or income creation. How do we do this? The government must adopt binding educational, professional, and ethical standards that ensure appointments to national, provincial, and local political and professional executives are anchored in merit, capability, and accountability. We must eliminate the short-term thinking in government decision-making by entrenching a culture of data-driven decision-making based on evidence and engagement. And we must reduce the number of national government departments to approximately 20 and completely eliminate the position of deputy ministers in all departments. As Action SA, we will be pursuing this in our constitutional amendment bill. Further to this, we must entrench the independence of the Public Service Commission and implement appointment practices that remove political influence over appointment processes. We must prohibit, as far as we can, cadre deployment by adopting strict merit-based appointment criteria and establish independent selection and appointment panels for key positions, and ensure that interview processes for senior officials are open to the public. We must implement strict performance and consequence management practices in supply chain and procurement processes that hold underperforming and non-performing service providers accountable. And finally, we must enforce limits on remuneration to expenditure ratios to avoid bloated staff structures across all government departments, while ensuring that the bulk of remuneration is spent on frontline workers as opposed to the management structures. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We end there as Action SA.
Thank you very much, Honourable Corbe. We don't have speakers indicated for the UDM NCC, and then we go directly over to the ANC, Honourable Ndamase.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Apologies, I was trying to maneuver how to get inside the meeting. I hope I can be heard audibly now.
Yes, you are audible. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Honorable Deputy Speaker and the honorable members at large, the members of the Executive Council that are part of this meeting. The African National Congress perceives the professionalization of public service as an integral part of the realization of the ideals as espoused by the Freedom Charter in a number of ways that include the following, amongst other things. It is those junior officials and those nurses in the Departments of Home Affairs and the Department of Health who are the least in the realization of the people shall govern clause as they assist in the attainment of requisite documents from birth certificates to identity documents. It is those educators and lecturers in the Departments of Basic Education and Higher Education and Training who literally burn the midnight oil for the wide opening of the doors of learning and culture. Honorable members, it is those court officials and police officials who sometimes under difficult circumstances that make an immense contribution to make sure that the ideal of all national groups shall have equal rights and other clauses of the Freedom Charter are worth the paper they are written on. It is a matter of history, Honorable House Chair, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that and the House at large, that it is this ANC of Oliver Reginald Tambo and Nelson Mandela and her allies in the South African Indian Congress, the South African Colored People's Organization, and the South African Congress of Democrats who are the brains behind this noble document. It is worth mentioning that our Constitution, as adopted in May 1996, is in one way or another a remarkable milestone in pursuit of the ideals of the Freedom Charter. Honorable Deputy Speaker and honorable members, the ANC in its build-up towards the 53rd National Conference that was held in 2012 hoisted higher the concept of developmental state with the following attributes amongst others. One, an approach premised on people-centered and people-driven change and sustained development based on high growth rates, restructuring of the economy, and socio-economic inclusion. Secondly, the capacity to lead in the definition of a common national agenda and in mobilizing all society to take part in its implementation. The ANC, therefore, makes a clarion call to public service to dig deeper in their resourcefulness to make developmental state a reality. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are mindful of the fact that in the midst of the committed public service, there are those that represent the antithesis of the model professionalized public service by engaging in deviant behaviors that include corruption and abuse of power. We therefore call upon the majority of upstanding public servants to isolate the few bad apples amongst them. As I'm trying to wind down, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we must stress that South Africa has opted for the path of a developmental state as a tool of the people to change their material conditions. A capable, ethical, and developmental state requires a professionalized public service as envisaged in Section 195, subsection 1A of the Constitution of South Africa. I quote, "The public administration must be governed by the democratic values and principles enshrined in the Constitution, such as standard of professional ethics being promoted and maintained." Again, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the National Development Plan acknowledges that for us as a country to deal decisively with the scourge of poverty and inequality, a capable state is a precondition, and further states, I quote, "This requires well-run and effectively coordinated state institutions staffed by skilled public servants who are committed to the public and capable of delivering consistently high-quality services to all South Africans," close quote. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the high standard of professional ethics requires what was summarized by the late ANC and SACP leader, Chris Hani, in his 1992 radio interview when he said in isiXhosa, "Umuntu ose-ofisini makangabajongeli phansi abantu ukuba esithi abafundanga." That can be translated into meaning that those who are in government offices should not discriminate people on the basis of their status in the society. A professional public servant must be at all material times demonstrate the ethos as articulated by Chrisan. I would like to touch few things in relation to the speakers that have spoken before me. I just want to have few messages for MK Party, for DA, for EFF, as well as Freedom Front. The MK Party is neither hot nor cold, because what is articulated there by Honorable Reddy is that there is no plan. At the same time, he says that in the plan, all the targets have been missed, and we don't know which one to take home in relation to that argument that he makes there. I have listened to the honorable member of the DA trying to give praises to specific ministers that are coincidentally members of the Democratic Alliance. And what she left is that those ministers, in whatever they do, they are ably led by the president of this country, and that is none other than Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, who is leading that change. For the EFF, I don't know, because the honorable member is talking about the absence of performance management and development system. And I'm talking about it because it has been long with us and we have been practicing it, and we made sure that as the ANC government, it is developmental in nature. For the Freedom Front Plus, you either choose to be part of government or you stay outside of it. You don't only take credit for good things and forget about the bad things. You have to take all of those. And I would like all of those speakers to refer to a philosopher called Plato, whom I can quote as follows: "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when the adult is afraid of light." Can you please see the light? Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable de Villiers.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The recent adoption of the PSC bill in the Public Service and Administration Committee was an important step in the fight against cadre deployment, the professionalization of the state, and the creation of a professional and merit-based appointment culture in the public service and administration. The Public Service Commission has always been hamstrung by the fact that it was historically structured underneath the Department of Public Service and Administration, resulting in the PSC arguably never being able to fulfill its constitutional mandated function of being an independent oversight body that looks after personnel and staffing issues in the public service without fear, favor, or prejudice. The current bill is primarily aimed at strengthening the independence of the PSC, mainly by the introduction of a dedicated secretariat to assist it in its functions. And to date, the PSC has had to rely on national government to ensure that it has both an adequate staffing component and budget. And this has impacted on the functioning and the perception of independence of the PSC. The new secretariat will be a separate staffing mechanism for the PSC, divorced from the national government, in order to strengthen the entity's independence. Importantly, the PSC bill is in line with foundational principles of the Statement of Intent of the 2024 Government of National Unity, and specifically Principle number 9, which commits all parties in the GNU to uphold a professional, merit-based, non-partisan, developmental public service that puts people first. Deputy Speaker, it should not be lost on anyone that throughout the process in the committee, the PSC bill was supported by all parties in the committee, and that there was no objection from any committee member in the adoption of the bill. It is a clear display that there are certain issues we can all agree about. The PSC bill is therefore a welcome and widely supported development towards an efficient, independent, and professional public service, and a very important step against cadre deployment. What has also been sharply highlighted this last 2 weeks is that South Africa is under immense financial pressure. And an important part of this is the country's ever-growing and ballooning government wage bill that has increased dramatically in recent years, reaching 724 billion in the 23-24 year. The public sector wage bill is around 10.5% of the country's GDP, the third highest as a percentage of GDP compared to 20 other major economies, which really makes it one of the highest in the world. And this places a strain on the government's finances and could lead to funding being diverted from other priorities, which puts pressure on taxpayers who already bear a very heavy burden. An important part of professionalizing the state is that whilst we strive to appoint more merit-based professionals, well qualified and experienced for their jobs, we also need to take a knife to the salary wastage in the public sector bill. We need to urgently start investigating public service employee benefits where wastage can be reduced, especially on benefits and wastage such as ghost employees on the payroll, employees sitting at home waiting for disciplinary actions, employees who are overqualified and thus are paid for their positions but cannot adequately perform, employees who are doing business with the state, and employees who are employed by the state whilst drawing SASSA grants at the same time. A professional state service needs a culture of professional conduct, and that will require us to not just proactively employ new merit-based professionals, but also identify those public service members who are currently working against the professionalization of the state. Lifestyle and structural audits of departments should become a standard annual practice under the guidance of the DPSA, but with a mandate on the respective department to roll them out, with serious consequences to those departments that do not comply. Deputy Speaker, the professionalization of the state is central to the success of the GNU and South Africa as a state. We can forget about turning around our rails, our hospitals, our schools, our ports, electricity, crime, water, in any other government services, and most importantly, our economy and our unemployment figures, if the people that must do the work are not merit-based and suitably qualified professionals. If our goal is to grow the economy and to create jobs, then the professionalization of the state is the first important foundation that needs to be built before we can truly construct the South Africa we all deserve. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We will now conclude this debate with the Honourable Nxaba-Ntshaba.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, as ANC, we are fully aware of the good work that public servants are doing. We also note those few who are not doing good, following the Bantu Bill principles. We encourage every government employee to work hard and with dignity for the people of South Africa. And we also call government must recognize the hard workers and the long-serving public servant in the government. And the Honourable Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I wanted to say to the Honourable Member of the MK, Honourable Reddy, our government of unity has a vision with the people of South Africa. That is why has implemented these national schools of government to make them to be a capable official. And also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, there was an honourable who says our government is not doing any consequence management. I wanted to tell the member that our government, if there will be those who are doing the wrong in the government, there will be a consequence management implementing in the government. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And that concludes this debate.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Siyabonga kakhulu, Mama. Thank you very much.
We shall now proceed to the last item in the order paper, which is a subject for discussion in the name of Honourable T K S Letlape on the urgent crisis of unemployed doctors and frontline medical professionals in South Africa and its devastating impact on the healthcare system. The Honourable T K S Letlape.
Thank you, Chair, for the session. I hope I am audible.
You are?
I can't imagine anything more devastating than studying and training for 9 to 10 years or longer, being ready to serve those that sacrificed for you to fulfill the dream of being a doctor or a nurse or one of the many other healthcare professionals and not being employed, despite the glaring need for your services and being told to go into private practice or immigrate. When one of us honorable members says that and we stay silent, it means we agree. It means all of us are running low on empathy and are devoid of compassion, not only for the young healthcare professionals, but for the society they want to serve. There can be no universal access to healthcare without well-trained, properly resourced healthcare professionals in adequate numbers. The essential frontline healthcare professionals are a soft target for methods to balance inadequate budgets that are poorly managed. Commonly, we hear of circulars from the administration and treasury to freeze vacant posts and not replace professionals in an essential area. This is an old and unethical, cold practice that continues to devastate the sector. We have non-essential human resource areas that are constantly growing, in particular, administration and political appointments. There is a direct correlation in the increasing litigation against the health departments and awards against government with inadequate and inappropriate frontline health workers. The use of task shifting or sharing as a permanent feature of the health system is an abuse of a mechanism that is meant to be a temporary measure. We continue to do this because we receive our health care elsewhere. In many instances, we have many professionals practicing beyond the scopes that they are registered for, to allow for shortfalls in appointing professional cadres. We allow this to continue because we are not personally affected. And frankly, we don't care. Why should we? We enjoy the protection of being on a special, expensive medical aid called PAMED, based on a separate piece of legislation from 1975, promulgated at the height of apartheid, a year prior to the massacre of young students from Soweto. This is a medical aid dripping with the blood of our struggle heroes and sheroes. We are willingly paying for a medical aid that takes care of our previous oppressors, including the legislatures, and importantly, the judiciary that sent the likes of Solomon Mahlangu to the gallows. We are the lawmakers, but are incapable of extracting ourselves from this mess. We should collectively hang our heads in shame. I am from a party called Action SA, whose policies state that as a public office bearer, I should use the health services from the public healthcare system. And until all of us do that, destruction of the public healthcare system will continue unabated. The Committee of Health has done one oversight visit to the Northwest in October last year. One of the glaring challenges is inadequate human resources in most, if not all places. We have vacancies in funded posts. The funded posts are usually less than the needed post based on staffing norms. Our healthcare professionals are understaffed, overburdened, and burnt out. I'm talking about the frontline healthcare workers. How then do we explain not employing needed young healthcare professionals? How do we get to a point where our children go into professions needed by the nation? We send them on government programs to study abroad. Some families do that on their own accord, and we tell them we don't have the duty to absorb them. This is training promoted to meet a need at great personal and financial sacrifice. Skills needed by society, and our children are told to go away. Madiba emphasized the value of education to improve the lives of all, and we are collectively rubbishing the value of education. It can't be that the only way to get ahead in our country is to be a cadre, hope for deployment, and score a tender. We have a collective responsibility to promote solidarity, a trained, skilled workforce, and a legislative and an administrative environment that facilitates meaningful job creation. There can be no national health without sufficient, well-trained human resources. It is the solemn duty of this parliament to find money in the upcoming budget to employ the much-needed health workforce. Money can be sourced from the health promotions levy, doing away with deputy minister posts, diverting NHI conditional grants to fund employment, stopping adverts for NHI and employing our young people, diverting the tax subsidy from medical aid to fund human resources, introducing line budgeting for provincial health budgets to ring-fence funds for human resources, drugs, essential equipment, and maintenance. There is an important subject. If we want accountability and an improved health system, we need to make health a national competence. When you try and do unscheduled oversight, our healthcare facilities are run like state facilities. The people that work in them cannot cry for help, cannot tell society what is happening in those. They get punished for doing their ethical duty of speaking up for the voiceless. We are prevented from entering these facilities to do our job of oversight. Let us make the necessary legislative and constitutional arrangements to make health a national competence. We do not need 10 ministers of health. Besides the cost, it promotes non-accountability. The National Minister of Health must be able to account, not to tell us when we bring issues of society that is a provincial competence. Those that cannot account are protected by political parties because they have oversight over the great sites of patronage. I appeal to us as MPs to seize this opportunity to really deserve being described as honorable. Any healthcare that we provide for our people, we should be prepared to consume that healthcare. National health is about restoring the public sector to its former glory, the one that gave the world its first heart transplant. These are our children. The people that use the public sector are our own. Let's pledge solidarity with them by going to those places, by creating a public healthcare system, recreating the public healthcare system that all of us can use at a personal level. I appeal to you, honorable members. Let's treat the matter of finding the funds to urgently employ our young people as an emergency. Our healthcare system is in crisis. I thank you, Chair. Do I still have time, Chair?
Sorry, now we're going on to the next speaker, the Honourable the Minister of Employment of Labour. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I've got an emergency here. I'm sorry about that. My battery just wanted to die, and I've been looking at it. I did not see it's dying. Good morning to you, Honorable Chairperson.
Good morning. We can continue.
Good morning to the honorable members of Parliament and all South Africans that are watching us as we proceed with this debate. Honorable Chairperson, I rise before, please allow me because of the bandwidth to just hide my face, Honorable Chairperson. I see I have a problem with the network now. I rise before you today to deliberate on a challenge that strikes at the very heart of our nation's welfare, the urgent crisis of unemployed doctors and frontline health professionals in South Africa. This is a deep human crisis that affects the well-being of our people and the integrity of our healthcare system. South Africa, whilst being one of the most industrialized nations on the African continent, remains one of the most unequal societies in the world, with about 16.7 million people employed. Moreover, the South African economy is faced with the high levels of unemployment, currently standing at 31.9% or 7.9 million. If one was to include the discouraged group who are not in employment, education, or training, that figure is set to be 45.5% or 11.8 million, as confirmed by the latest Q4 labor force survey. There are two historic factors which account for South Africa's high unemployment. The first has to do with the intentional decimation of peasant agriculture and the informal sector's failure to play a more powerful role. The informal sector contributes 6% to South Africa's GDP. In a typical global middle-income country labor market has 45-45-10 ratio of wage employed, informally employed, unemployed. For South Africa, this ratio is 50-16-34. Since 2008, the GDP growth has been slower than in the labor force, leading to rising unemployment. Every 1% of GDP growth creates about 130,000 new jobs. Each year, approximately 1 million individuals enter the South African labor market. Of these, only about 40% secures steady employment. 400,000 of them will be employed, 300,000 will be employed anywhere, and 300,000 will never be employed. Employment has been fluctuating in the second quarters of each year since 2017, with increases observed in 2019, 2022, and 2023, while other years experienced decreases. We also need to understand, again, that the issue of the surplus labor force occurs when the section of working population is not fully employed in productive activities or end up settling for low-paid jobs because of low demand in the labor market. South Africa is facing a compelling challenge where 84% of the population, which is Black and poor majority, is uninsured and depend on the public healthcare service, while 16% largely white and those elite insured population is managed by the private sector through the medical aid, which is also partly subsidized by government, if I might not say largely. What is disturbing, Honorable Chair, is that the insured continue to overburden the public sector system once their medical aid funds get depleted. Unfortunately, the public sector ends up subsidizing the private health care services, a daylight robbery. There is disproportionate allocation of financial resources to health system in South Africa. 55% of the total health expenditure in South Africa is allocated to private health catering for the 16% of the population, and 45% goes to the 84% majority of the disadvantaged population. The existing economic situation leading to increasing unemployment across the board has a huge impact on the Department of Health. The healthcare professionals that used to be appointed post-internship and community services are no longer appointed in huge numbers like before. Hence the outcry of the professional health professionals, and in particular the medical doctors. This is a general challenge for all healthcare professionals, but let me emphasize that government keeps its obligation of ensuring that these healthcare professionals go through internship, which is 2 years, and community services, which is 1 year, and thereafter are expected to seek employment like any other professional in the country. Addressing these challenges requires a multidimensional approach that would encompass both immediate and long-term strategies, be it policy or targeted interventions. Honorable Chair, allow me to make an example of disparities that existed before 1994 in the provision of healthcare services in the Eastern Cape. Access to healthcare services was discriminatory along racial lines and geographic location. When we as the ANC took over in 1994, we merged 3 systems, that is Transkei, Ciskei, and Apartheid South Africa health systems into one. In the Apartheid era, access to health services depended on where you were located. To put it starkly, the white minority population was eating buttered bread, while the Black majority population were battling to even access the crumbs. Expenditure on healthcare services to the Black population who lived in their homelands was 55 rand per capita, while white South Africans had 591 per capita expenditure. The ratio of the doctors per capita was 1:282 for white South Africans, while for Africans, it was 1:53,500. Those who don't want playing fields to be leveled are fighting tooth and nail, trying to block the NHI. We are grateful to the ANC for introducing NHI and the majority of South Africans who supported it during the public hearings. It is the struggles that were waged by the South Africans that led to this victory as envisaged in the Freedom Charter under the clause, I quote, "There shall be houses, security and comfort," and the Freedom Charter envisaged a preventive health scheme, and it said there shall be preventive health scheme that is run by the state. There shall be free medical care and hospitalization, and that shall be provided in particular for mothers and young children. The Freedom Charter became the cornerstone of our most progressive constitution in the world. Section 27 of the Constitution under the Bill of Rights dictates everyone has a right to have access to health care services, including reproductive health care. The goal of the NHI is to ensure equity and equal access to quality healthcare services based on health needs and not on affordability. In fulfilling the constitutional mandate, we are guided by the wise word of the President Nelson Mandela, who said, I quote, "Healthcare cannot be a question of income. It is a fundamental human right," close quote. The ANC made it its policy for health professionals to go for 2 years internship and 1 year community services, in particular for doctors, in order to expose them to experiential learning and world of work. The ANC-led Freedom Charter claims that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all. The access before 1994 to universities was limited for Black South Africans, in particular doctors. Before 1994 and apartheid, a ratio of 1:10 Black South Africans had access to higher education compared to post-1994, where access has now led to Black students, approximately 70% of the student population, to South African universities. Due to scarcity at the time, the ANC government made it compulsory for doctors and health professionals to go through a 2-year community service and 2-year internship and 1-year community services. This has unfortunately created a legitimate expectation. It has since become a challenge for government to absorb them due to many factors, one being the number of those who qualify and the sluggish economic growth. The situation of the GDP debt ratio and the debt servicing costs pose a challenge for government in finding apex priorities of government like health. There is a umbilical cord relationship between healthy workforce, healthy population, and economic growth. It will be a miss of government to focus on economic growth and neglect provision of healthcare services. The National Development Plan affirms that inclusive growth must feature healthcare as a vital component of our economic trajectory. The recent decision by US President to suspend US aid to South Africa has caused a strain. We acknowledge and congratulate the intervention of the Minister Motsoaledi, to salvage the situation through alternative means. In his recent State of the Nation address, His Excellency President Ramaphosa outlined measures to combat unemployment, including expanding the NHI framework, which promises thousands of new healthcare jobs if executed effectively, strengthening employment tax incentives to encourage both public and private health care employers to hire young professionals, investing in skills development so that graduates have the clinical and administrative expertise to thrive in the workforce, upgrading job matching platforms like the Employment Services of South Africa, which is overseen by the Department of Employment and Labor. The revised ETI guidelines 24-25 from the National Treasury likewise give higher deductions to hospitals that employ newly qualified healthcare practitioners. Additionally, the ESA modernization project, as detailed in our APP as the Department of Employment and Labor, will ensure an improved technology-driven approach to matching unemployed doctors with available positions. One of our greatest hurdles is fragmentation of efforts across different government departments. To resolve this crisis of unemployed doctors and frontline health professionals, we need a comprehensive health workforce employment plan. The Employment Services of South Africa must become the go-to platform for connecting unemployed health professionals to real-time public and private employment opportunities, referencing the Department of Health's Human Resource for Health Strategy 2030 and our own comprehensive employment framework under DEL Strategic Plan 24-29. We will certainly ensure seamless coordination. The Administrative Simplification Task Team within the Interministerial Committee on Health will help overcome the procedural barriers to stand in the way of more efficient recruitment. DEL holds the following mandate: overseeing fair labor practices, job creation, and economic transformation. We hold the following mandate: regulation of labor market to guarantee fair and safe working conditions for healthcare personnel, administering public employment programs, ensuring expansion into critical sectors like health, overseeing ESA, the critical link between matches healthcare professionals to job opportunities, and managing UIF, extending financial support to those between jobs, including medical graduates in transition. Looking ahead, we intend to establish a dedicated healthcare employment task force to develop an implementation of a sustainable solution for unemployed doctors. In concluding, Madam Chair, colleagues and fellow South Africans, the crisis of unemployed medical professionals demands our immediate attention. Our healthcare facilities cannot continue to be understaffed while qualified doctors sit idle. It is both a moral and practical imperative that we must act on, not just as public sector, but including the private sector. As the Department of Employment and Labor, we stand ready to spearhead this mission, working hand in hand with DOH and possibly the private sector and other institutions of relevance. Our strategic plans, annual performance plans, and the National Development Plan all reinforce our dedication to eradicating unemployment through unity of purpose and decisive action. Let us move beyond discussions and put these plans into practice so that every trained medical professional can serve where they are needed the most, thereby strengthening our healthcare system and taking a vital step toward a more equitable and prosperous South Africa. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We proceed now to the MK. We did not receive a name, but is there a speaker for the MK?
Thanks, House Chair. I'll speak on behalf of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. It's TL Montana. Chair, let me. Can you hear me, Chair?
I can hear you. You can proceed, Honorable Montana.
And thanks very much, Chair. Just listening to the statement of the opening statement by Dr. Letlape, there's no doubt that we face not a crisis and not a crisis of unemployed doctors. We face a national catastrophe. I think that there's no better person who'd bring that to the nation's attention, like Dr. Letlape, a healthcare professional himself, a leader in that space. And I'm glad that he has taken this opportunity, not only to serve as a conscience of all of us in Parliament, but I think he has put a clear call, a call for action, for immediate action. And Chair, is quite clear from what he's saying that there is an opportunity in the next coming weeks to address this issue in a clear way, in a direct way. And I must say that I'm disappointed listening to the Honorable Minister, where we talk about the kind of task teams and what could be done. There's no doubt that since 1994, and in fact, since the passage of what we call money bills, we haven't had any change. And I think that parties should unite across, as members of Parliament, we should unite across our party lines, beyond that, to unite and make sure that this time around, when the budget is presented and we have discussions, we really push to make sure that the budget that Dr. Letlape called for is really made available. I'm disappointed that the minister makes a statement which I think is part of the problem. She says that after community service, doctors, like any other person, can then start to look for work. This is part of the problem. We think that we should change course. Part of why we face this crisis is because South Africa continues to do the same, even where we see that there are no results. We see that we are not making changes. So I think the Honorable Minister should realize and engage with his cabinet colleague, the Minister of Health, that we actually need a standard so that for doctors in particular, that they are guaranteed of an employment. And I think that the public sector has got the facilities, the resources to be able to do exactly that. In fact, investment in healthcare, in education, and infrastructure is perhaps the most important task of any state. Yet we are failing that fundamental task. We were lectured earlier on about the transformation and the professionalization of the public service. Yet when we come to the action, The very same people who give us lectures about a professional, ethical public service are the ones who are denying young people the opportunity to serve their country, to ensure that we improve not only on the health of our own citizens, but we improve on their life expectancy in line with universal standards. The majority of public servants, we know that they're made of doctors, nurses, police. Yet there's been so much focus on a small section within the public service. And I understand when there's frustrations about cadre development, when there's frustration about the corruption, there's concern about wastage. But I think that we need to go back to the basics and make sure that in the coming 2 weeks, we don't only call for the upliftment of the moratorium on employment on those posts, starting with funded posts. When this budget comes before us, we need to make a clear call and make sure that all those funded posts for doctors are filled immediately. We need to ensure and push back against the budget cuts and the austerity measures that are destroying our health system, that are destroying the health infrastructure, the hospitals, the clinics, even the very goals of a national health insurance or universal access and primary health care will not be realized. The minister spoke about the Freedom Charter and how it makes health a right and not a privilege. She stated that the Constitution enjoins us to act. But I think that we are failing to do what is right. It's quite clear to some of us that the government is afraid to take direct measures. The minister comes as a member of the executive, and she tells us about how we're subsidizing the private sector. But that's within your control, Honorable Minister. That's for you to take the direct measures that we require. And most importantly, I think that when we talk about addressing some of the health challenges, it is not only about medical aid. It's not about shifting only from to primary health care. It's to ensure that we take the right policies to shift the burden on the health system and allocate resources and allocate the risk or the burden where it's coming from. For example, we see alcohol placing a huge burden on the public health system. There's no immediate action to address that. We see the issue about sugar. We know that there's a sugar tax, but we see that this is not also quite balanced to realize some of the objectives that you've said. We've seen road accidents. Now, it is very important that our policy should ensure that we do not subsidize those that should not be subsidized. And most importantly, I think that the ANC government or the what we call the GNU should have the courage to take on the private sector the resistance that we see. Some of the lectures we had this morning was that we need to bring the best people from the private sector. Yet we can see that even the resistance in the implementation of the national health insurance is coming from the private sector because they want to continue with the model where we subsidize. Finally, I think that there is a matter that we've been discussing in Mkhonto weSizwe, the issue of the expensive medical aid for members of parliament. The Honorable Minister of Health did raise the issue that we are sitting as a privileged few enjoying this rise that the majority of people do not enjoy. And in closing, Chair, we are coming to a point where something will give the youth of our country are now on the edge. If Dr. Letlape referred us to 1976, that the system is built on the blood of the generation of 1976, the current generation have lost confidence in the political process, in the system that we have, because it's denying them of the most basic thing, a dignity and a livelihood that they are entitled to. Thank you, Chair.
We are now proceeding to the DA, Honorable M.O. Clark.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honourable members, and good morning to South African citizens. Chairperson, we stand here today to address an urgent and devastating crisis: the severe shortage of doctors and frontline medical professionals in South Africa. This is not merely an administrative inconvenience. It is a national emergency crippling our public healthcare system, leaving millions of vulnerable South Africans without access to basic medical services. Our doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, the backbone of our healthcare system, are being forced into unemployment, pushed into the private sector, or driven to leave our country altogether. Meanwhile, communities across South Africa continue to suffer due to understaffed hospitals, overcrowded clinics, and a healthcare system stretched beyond its limits. This is an unavoidable tragedy, yet our government has chosen to turn a blind eye to this dire situation. As of from April 2024, the national vacancy rate of medical officers stood at a shocking 14%. This is not just a statistic, it translates into real suffering for our people. Provinces such as the Free State, Northwest, and Limpopo are among the worst affected, with some hospitals and healthcare facilities in a state of near collapse due to unfilled vacancies. Chairperson, while thousands of qualified medical professionals stand ready and willing to serve, government's hospitals continue to operate without sufficient staff. The Motherwell Clinic in Eastern Cape, the NU8 clinic, was forced to shut down its doors due to staff shortages. How many more clinics and hospitals must we close before this government acknowledges the depth of this crisis? Despite these shocking realities, what is the response of Minister Aaron Motsoaledi? Excuses about budget constraints, indifference, and unwavering obsession with the National Health Insurance Scheme, a R1 billion project that remains far from implementation and riddled with fundamental flaws. Let us be clear, this crisis is not due to a lack of medical professionals. It is a result of government that refuses to prioritize frontline healthcare workers. It is about a health minister who is more concerned about political grandstanding than ensuring that our people receive quality healthcare. Last year alone, only 60% of doctors who completed their community service were appointed into government posts. The remaining 40% were abandoned by the system. Some managed to find positions in the private sector, while others faced unemployment and were forced to seek opportunities abroad. This is an outright failure of governance. I challenge every member in this House to visit a government hospital or clinic today. You will witness overburdened staff struggling to treat long line of patients, emergency rooms filled beyond capacity, and operating theatres standing empty due to lack of available doctors. Pregnant women are turned away from maternity wards due to the staff shortages. Cancer patients wait months, sometimes years, for life-saving treatment. Rural communities already struggling with inadequate healthcare services are left even more vulnerable. The people who suffer the most are the poor, the elderly, the sick, and the children who rely on government healthcare as their only option. This is not just a crisis, it's a betrayal of the constitutional right to healthcare. Fellow South Africans, we cannot allow this situation to continue. The Democratic Alliance believes in healthcare systems that work for all citizens, not just the privileged few. We propose practical solutions to immediately alleviate the crisis and restore our healthcare system. Fill the vacant posts now. Thousands of trained medical professionals are eager to work. The government must urgently allocate funds to hire them and place them in hospitals and clinics where they are needed most. We will submit parliamentary questions demanding a full breakdown of existing vacancies and the reasons they remain unfunded. Decentralized healthcare management. Provinces and hospital boards must be given greater autonomy to manage their own budgets and hire medical staff based on immediate needs. The centralized bureaucracy system is failing our people. Cut the bloated bureaucracy. Millions are wasted on unnecessary administrative costs, while doctors and nurses remain unemployed. We need fewer government officials sitting in offices and more health workers on the ground. Chairperson, this crisis is not just about numbers or statistics. It's about human lives, and therefore we say, scrap the NHI in its current form. The NHI is a pipe dream that diverts attention and resources away from urgent healthcare needs. We must focus on fixing the current system before embarking on costly and unrealistic reforms. Create more training and internship opportunities. Every medical graduate should be guaranteed placement for internship and community service. Our healthcare system cannot afford to lose even a single doctor due to mismanagement and lack of planning. Every unfilled post, every unemployed doctor, every neglected hospital is another step towards the collapse of our healthcare system. We cannot and will not remain silent while millions suffer due to government inactions. The DA will continue to fight for accountability, urgent policy changes, and healthcare professionals who are dedicating their lives to serving South Africans. We call on all citizens, civil societies, organizations, and medical professions to join us in this fight. We will not allow Minister Motsoaledi to gamble with the lives of our people. South Africa deserves a government that values its doctors, prioritizes its patients, and delivers real, meaningful healthcare reform. That is the future we are fighting for. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We proceed now to the EFF, Honorable P.R. Mailola.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings, honorable members. Chairperson, at the beginning of this year, the Minister of Health indicated that the country had no money to hire any more doctors for public service in this country. This was in the backdrop of the South African Medical Association having raised concerns about the plight of about 1,800 junior doctors who were unemployed in this country. To put this in context, Chairperson, the World Health Organization recommends a doctor to a population ratio of about 2.5 doctors per 1,000 people. In South Africa at the moment, we have about 0.3 doctors per 1,000 people. This in a country where about 85% of the population depends on public health care, and only about 15% have medical aid, which allows them to access private health care. Chair, in an exercise the EFF did in 2018, when we declared that year a year of public health care, we found that in the country we had a shortage of about 18,000 nurses, 2,250 doctors, 150 dentists. Almost 3,000 of these shortages were in KwaZulu-Natal. And at that time, oncology services had collapsed in that province. Hospitals such as Odi Hospital in Pretoria had mortuary fridges that had been dysfunctional for 10 years, for instance. I'm highlighting these challenges, Chair, to demonstrate that these challenges are not new. They have their genesis at the gross mismanagement of the country under Jacob Zuma, and now at the most clueless management of the country's priority under Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. What this gross management of the country's affairs means is that every single day, as millions of the elderly and the sick visit this country's clinics, they will not find suitable qualified doctors to look after their health needs. The situation becomes more acute in rural areas. There are simply no doctors in these areas, and the few that are there are struggling to make ends meet. This, Chairperson, is a product of political choices made by the leadership of this country at various stages over the past 30 years. The austerity measures adopted by the Ramaphosa regime have ensured that we do not have sufficient budget for our doctors, teachers, the army, crime fighting, and general public service provision. Our soldiers are dying in DRC because of this. Our teachers are being retrenched in the Western Cape and elsewhere because of this. And obviously, our hospitals are overflowing with patients who cannot be attended by doctors because of this. This is a very misguided policy direction because we cannot solve this country's problem by cutting back on public spending for the common good. The most tragic is that we are not producing nearly enough doctors to deal with the health needs of our population, but we are not even able to employ those we have circulating in our system. At a time when our nation requires skilled and dedicated healthcare workers more than ever, we are witnessing a tragic paradox in which qualified doctors and frontline workers are struggling to find employment. This not only undermines the efforts to provide quality healthcare services to our people, but also leads to a waste of precious human capital. The ripple effects of this crisis are far-reaching and profound. Patients are left without access to time and adequate educational care, leading to unnecessary suffering and even loss of life. Our healthcare facilities, Chair, are understaffed and overburdened, compromising the quality of services and putting further strains on an already struggling system. The morale of the healthcare workers is dampened as they witness the stark reality of colleagues facing unemployment despite the experience and commitment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. We are proceeding to the IFP, Honorable N.H. Mshangu.
Honorable Speaker, the IFP is deeply concerned about the growing crisis of unemployed doctors and frontline medical professionals in South Africa. It is both alarming and unacceptable that while our public hospitals are understaffed and overwhelmed, qualified doctors remain jobless due to government inefficiencies and budget constraints. Every year, we produce world-class medical graduates, yet they are cast aside due to the budget shortfalls and bureaucratic inefficiencies. According to the South African Medical Association, at least over 1,800 medical graduates were left without internships or community service placement as of this year, leaving their future uncertain. The health department failure to create sufficient posts means that even highly qualified specialists are left without employment. This crisis is crippling our already struggling healthcare system. In our manifesto, we acknowledge the critical shortages of healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, and support staff, particularly in the rural areas. As patients wait in endless queues, rural clinics remain without doctors, and avoidable deaths continue to rise. In provinces like the Eastern Cape and Limpopo, critical shortages of medical professionals has led to hospitals functioning with minimal staff and putting patients' life at risk. This compromises the quality of care, leaving vulnerable populations with inadequate medical attention. We strongly advocate for the immediate employment of unemployed and trained healthcare providers to ensure that every citizen that has access to the care they deserve. Additionally, improving working conditions for all healthcare workers is a key component to our vision. By ensuring that healthcare professionals have the resources, support, and environment they need to work effectively, we can improve retention rates and prevent burnouts, ultimately leading to better healthcare outcomes for all South Africans. The IFP demands urgent intervention. The department must immediately allocate funding to absorb unemployed doctors, review hiring policies, and decentralized recruitment to provinces. Health is a right, not a privilege. If we fail to act, we are failing the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of the Patriotic Alliance? If not, we are moving on to the next speaker from the Freedom Plus Front, Honorable P Nxaba-Ntshaba.
Dankie, voorsitter. Voorsitter, in Januarie vanjaar het die Suid-Afrikaanse Mediese Vereniging 'n oop skrywe aan die president gerig, waarin hulle die president versoek het om die werkloosheidskrisis onder gekwalifiseerde medici dringend aan te spreek. Die vereniging het die president gewaarsku dat indien die krisis nie aangespreek word nie, dit kan lei tot 'n verdere verlies van mediese personeel na die private sektor, sowel as immigrasie en uiteindelik die totale ineenstorting van die openbare gesondheidstelsel. Elke jaar word die VF+ oorval met klagtes van mediese studente wat moet aanmeld as mediese interns, maar wat nie deur die staat geplaas word om 'n internskap te kan voltooi nie. Dit terwyl ons publieke hospitale reg deur die land ernstige tekorte het aan dokters. 2025 was geen uitsondering nie, en vanjaar het 1800 junior dokters wat hul opleiding voltooi het, is tans nog werkloos. En alle aanduidings is daar dat Suid-Afrika lank reeds in 'n krisis verkeer. South Africa's number of doctors per population is currently at 0.3 doctors per 1,000 people. This is while the World Health Organization recommends is at 2.5 doctors per 1,000 people. Yes, we need funds to appoint doctors and other frontline medical professionals. And yes, indeed, budget cuts have a huge impact on this, but whose fault is it that we are in this crisis? A crisis that I and the Freedom Front Plus have warned against for the past 6 years in this very same parliament. It is clear that the Minister of Health is not capable of leading this department. It is clear that the Minister's priorities are not aligned and completely wrong. Since April 24, this department has spent over 3 million rand per month on advertising costs for the NHI. What a waste of money. That amounts to 28 million from April 24 to February 25. But there is more. The Minister himself admitted to the VF+ during a portfolio committee meeting in October last year that the 89 million that was spent on NHI advertising campaigns in previous years, and I quote, was mostly a waste of money and that the expenditure did not offer the value for money, close quote. The VF+ is of a view that this money could have been better used given public hospitals' decay and dysfunction, the lack of medical staff, ambulances, doctors and nurses. Our pharmacies are empty, essential medical equipment is missing, and there is a shortage of beds and water. Die minister en die ANC moenie kla oor die USAID en PEPFAR fondse wat gestaak is nie. En ek het in die vorige komitee gesê, ons moes ons huise in orde gekry het en self ons eie fondse opgebring het. Maar as die minister en departement se prioriteite reg was, het ons nie nou in hierdie ernstige krisis gesit nie. Hier is nie die Amerikaners, president Donald Trump of apartheid se skuld nie, maar hierdie is absoluut die ANC se skuld. Dankie voorsitter.
Thank you. We proceed to the UDM. Is there any member of the UDM? Then we proceed to the NCC. Now member of the NCC. And or the UAT. We call on the Al-Jamai, Honorable S. Sali.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Assalamu alaikum and good morning and Jumu'ah Mubarak to our viewers who are firstly, how serious are we in South Africa to the right to healthcare, which is a fundamental right enshrined in our constitution? We are indeed 30 years into democracy, the most unequal society where the type of service we receive is dependent on our social economic standing. Majority of people in South Africa are dependent on public healthcare services. We who are working on the ground witness over the years the long queues, the lack of infrastructure, lack of medical staff, and exhausted medical staff. Our medical professionals are overworked, underpaid, and abused. A crippling shortage of medical professionals resulting in a healthcare system that is collapsing under the injustice of many years in our democracy. Yet we have 2,000 qualified medical doctors alone without work and an estimate of 20,000 nurses. Budget constraints, corruption, mismanagement of funds continue to plague every sector of government, leading to poor infrastructure, lack of funds, lack of crucial filling of positions, and in this case, the need for absorbing the unemployed doctors into hospitals. We have a growing population, yet no foreseeability in crucial sectors in need for more frontline staff. We know that private institutions have more resources than public hospitals. We know there's a fight back against the NHI, but it is imperative that we comprehend the right of healthcare and place right to health and life first and dignity in the forefront. As we sit here today, I personally know of doctors and nurses who have left and are leaving this country. Years of studies and sacrifice and money paid, but no other option but to leave for overseas where their services and hard work will be appreciated. South Africa is currently at an estimate of 1 doctor to 3,000 patients in places where it's supposed to be at least 2 to 1,000, according to stats. Is it's even worth studying medicine anymore? We value the airport and Eskom more than we value our doctors. How many sectors have been bailed out financially? Yet we find in our country, we cannot put the people of our country's rights to healthcare first. We are incapable of valuing the health and life of others. We have a society with an increased love of gambling, and we even gamble with the lives of our most vulnerable people. The Minister of Finance and Health and all stakeholders need to ensure they make serious efforts to allocate extra funding to the sector and specifically to the employment of frontline workers in areas where it is most needed. Stop the suffering and humiliation of our people who suffer as a result of the failures within our healthcare sector, our failure within government. On an urgent basis, this matter needs to be attended to, and unemployed doctors, nurses, and other medical staff be employed. We cannot negotiate with the lives and health of the people of our country by ignoring the fact that we do have available doctors and nurses, but refuse to employ these individuals. What happened to the government's 10-point program aid to holistically improve the healthcare services? What happened to foreseeability and accountability? Honorable Chair, I'm very concerned that this is just another tick box exercise today and that we're not going to see any positive efforts being made forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. We proceed to the DA, Honorable Dr. K.W.D. Leroux.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I thank the Honourable Dr. Letlape for calling this debate. I am sure that every South African must be flabbergasted to hear that despite our desperate need for doctors and other healthcare workers in the public service, there are nearly 1,800 to 2,000 young doctors and pharmacists who are unemployed, a significant proportion of them having just completed their community service at the end of 2024. What has caused this unprecedented situation, and what can be done about it? For context, let me take you back to 1994, when the community service year was first introduced. At that stage, only for doctors under the then Minister Nkosi Zuma. It was intended to retain doctors in the public service for an extra year post-internship to mitigate doctor shortages, especially in underserved and rural areas. Legislation was amended so that all South African doctors are required to perform community service before they are able to register as independent practitioners with the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And though a proportion of doctors have every year moved straight into private practice once their community service was complete, the majority have always chosen to stay in the public sector to gain further experience in different disciplines and also to specialize. On the whole, due to previous shortages of doctors and a surplus of posts, the different provincial departments of health have over the years been able to absorb most doctors who wanted to remain in the public service after completing their community service. Understandably, and due to these doctor shortages, the Department of Health has especially since 2011, worked closely with South African universities to increase the number of university graduates, and also, a bit more controversially, significantly increased the number of students training as doctors in Cuba over this period, with 650 returning to South Africa in 2020 and 1,291 in 2021. As a result, the number of first-year internship posts required for new graduates have increased by 61% between 2017 and 2020, from 1,476 to 2,369, which dominoes into second-year internships and community service posts. And though some funding has been allocated to compensate for this increase in numbers through the Human Resources Training Grant, it has not been enough. Instead, medical officer posts intended for post-community service doctors have in some provinces been converted into community service and internship posts, which means that when junior doctors complete their community service, they can no longer be absorbed into posts as before, and instead, medical officer posts in the public service have become as rare as hen's teeth. When posts do become available and are advertised, there are usually dozens of qualified applications for a single post. The situation has been exacerbated by the challenging fiscal situation in most provinces, lower than expected budget increases, and unhelpful austerity measures where cuts are performed using a bazooka rather than a scalpel. A good example of this is that in many provinces, posts that are unfilled at the end of the financial year are simply frozen, even if this is a critical post for emergency unit doctors or ICU nurses. And applying to freeze posts can be extremely difficult or even impossible. The sudden dramatic increase in the number of medical students graduating that I illustrated earlier, combined with what appears to have been inadequate planning and budgeting by the Department of Health, has been at the root of this current crisis of unemployed doctors. This has been exacerbated by the fiscal crisis and budgets that have shrunk in real terms. The DA has deep sympathy with the unemployed doctors and other healthcare workers who may need to find work in the private sector or be first forced overseas, even if they would prefer to stay in the public sector. This means that hundreds of skilled South African doctors whose expensive education has been subsidized by South African taxpayers, as well as the provincial bursary holders whose tuition has been fully covered by provinces, but who have now been released from all the obligations of their bursaries, will be lost to the public sector and may even relocate overseas permanently. What can be done to help these doctors and make sure that they are able to serve in the public facilities where they are so desperately needed? Several honourable members have suggested that we stopped subsidies for South Africans who are on medical aid, but this will be massively counterproductive, pushing more people into the failing public sector, where they will actually cost the government more than if they stay in the private sector and get small subsidies. There's also been a suggestion in some provinces like the Eastern Cape that we should replace commuted overtime with a shift system, thereby employing more doctors. But again, this will be prohibitively expensive. Our suggestions are the following. Firstly, critical posts that have been budgeted for and then frozen due to doctors leaving too close to the end of the financial year need to be reopened urgently and advertised. Secondly, the Department of Health needs to carefully review the community service program to consider whether it is still required, even the most rural hospitals now have a queue of doctors applying for available jobs. Ending the community service program would open up more than 2,000 medical officer posts for unemployed doctors by the beginning of next year, and make those posts available to all unemployed doctors, not only those who have just completed the internship. Thirdly, an urgent spending review must be performed to identify all non-critical expenditure. Like, for example, the 30 million that has been spent on advertising the NHI and could have employed at least 30 doctors, as well as any wasteful and irregular expenditure, such as the oxygen plant tender of more than 400 million rands that was given to a company without SAPRA registration, or the 580,000 rand spent over 2 years to accommodate the CEO of my old hospital in the Eastern Cape in hotels in Mthatha when free accommodation was available. This money should be shifted to open critical healthcare posts. Finally, for the medium term, the GNU needs to prioritize growth and jobs, which will increase tax revenue and health budgets by simplifying regulations, relaxing onerous labor laws, getting rid of job killing and corruption-inducing BEE laws that harm our economy. We need to act urgently to find funding to allow us to employ as many of the unemployed doctors as we can. Anything else would be an enormous loss for our country. I thank you.
Thank you. We now proceed to the ANC, the Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Needless to say, this is a very, very important debate because the sector that we are talking about, our lives depend on it, because healthcare is a right. And that's why we put it so in Section 27 of the Constitution. In my party, we didn't only start there. We started in 1943 when we put the African claims. One of the things that was said there, if you read that document, is exactly what must happen to healthcare system. In 1955, it was again put in the Freedom Charter to the effect that healthcare is a right, and a right cannot be sold with money. It needs to be given to people as a right. I was hoping, Chair, that will call this debate to call for solutions. And I'm quite happy, and to be fair, Dr. Leroux did try his best, and I agree with him on quite a number of things on what the solution should be. Unfortunately, other members chose to play politics on this matter and score political points. And I'm really forced, unfortunately, rather than just giving you the correct facts, but also to correct those distortions that have been put into this debate. The first distortion is what appeared in the Citizen newspaper when the first group of doctors marched about me saying people must migrate and go into private sector, etc. That's not what I said. I was describing the situation as it works. And I want to take this opportunity to describe to you now how it works at the present moment, not what I want or not whether I support it, but what is working at the present moment, which we want to change, by the way, in the NHI Act, which some of you are also attacking. How the system works is that when you finish medicine, you have got to do internship. And during my time, internship was 1 year. It was subsequently increased to 2 years to expose students more to practical work. Without internship, you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't work. You can't. In other words, you will just have a certificate because internship is part of training. For that reason, internship is statutory. It means we are forced by law to implement it. Now, I had some people here quoting about interns who have got no job. Honorable Mhlongo from IFP, I want to correct you. There is no intern who is left, intern doctor who is left without a job, because then we will be breaching the law of the country. So this year, a total of 2,197
new qualified medical graduates who are citizens and permanent residents were successfully placed for internship positions, all 2,197, at the cost of 2,176,536,940. They are fully placed. And that is the first step in the medical field. The second step, which has been explained here again by Dr. Leroux, was that when Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma became minister, the first minister after apartheid, she realized that many doctors choose not to go and work in rural areas because there were posts everywhere and there was no problem with the budget. So the choice was very wide and the choice was always in the cities. She then introduced community health service for 1 year, which also became statutory, that all doctors have to do community health service, because her aim was that in every hospital in the country, there ought to be a doctor, which was not the case during my time. I worked in many rural hospitals. There are hospitals where I worked alone, literally, and I can give you the names, you can go and check. In order to cancel that, she introduced community service. Now, this year, 2,424 doctors were put on community service, all of them who have completed their internship, because this is statutory. They were placed at the cost of 3,161,999,827 rand, and they are doing the job as I am saying now. Now, I went further. The distortion that was put in the citizen, I went further and said, after community service, then the statutory role ends there. I'm not the one who came with that law. It's like that. The statutory role ends. Then provinces must advertise positions for doctors, for nurses, like they advertise any other job. It's true, it's like that. And people must apply. Earlier on in my first stint at health, we used to have problems even with this system. In the Eastern Cape, where even with posts available, doctors were not going there because they've completed community service. They prefer to stay and look for jobs elsewhere. Now, what I was describing is, what does the law say after community service? After community service, you are a fully qualified doctor. You can stay in the public service. If there is a job there, which has been advertised, you can go and work for a private sector entity. If you saw with some work for medical aid schemes, others for pharmaceutical companies, etc. And I mentioned that others go to work overseas, not migrate. They go and work. And it's not something that we encourage. This matter of doctors leaving their countries to go and work overseas was debated many times in the World Health Assembly in Geneva under the auspice of the World Health Organization. I personally, in 2012, honorable members, I went to the UK to negotiate with the Minister of Health to please stop recruiting nurses from South Africa, because the recruitment was severe at a higher salary, which we do not have, At that moment, there were 1,800 nurses from South Africa who were working in Britain, and they released and left with 86 after negotiations. So the issue of doctors going overseas is just a process that has been there. And I was explaining it, that after internship, the law allows you to go there. Whether you go or not is another story, but the law allows you to go there, definitely. So after you completed, you do internship, it's statutory, you can't do anything without it. Then community service was introduced, it's statutory, you can't do anything without it. That's why we employed all of those. But after community service, there is no longer statutory requirements. Jobs have to be advertised as they come and you apply. And the problem is, in the past, there was no shortage of budget. That's why people thought it was an absorption. And all I was doing was to explain that legally, there is nothing called an absorption once you finish community service. And I was not saying we must throw people away. I was giving the framework of what happens, which have been happening for ages, and Dr. Letlape, having been in this profession, knows better. And my heart is painful. That is the one who is coming with these allegations when he knows exactly the situation. Apart from being a doctor, he was in charge of the situation, having been the president of the Health Professions Council of South Africa. He knows very well that what I was outlining is what happens now. Now, let's come to this issue of we having to solve the problem and not meeting NHI. Colleagues, I was not going to talk about NHI today, but you are forcing me, you provoke me. NHI is not a vantage healthcare system, which we implement when we have got enough doctors, enough nurses, good hospitals. No. The World Health Organization, consisting of experts who live, breathe, talk, eat, sleep, and study health, came up with what they call the 6 building blocks of a healthcare system. That a healthcare system cannot work very well without those 6 building blocks. And one of the 6 building blocks is health workforce, and the other one is healthcare financing. I will leave the others because today what we are debating is health workforce and financing. The World Health Organization realized that all the other building blocks, including the adequacy of the health workforce, including countries not meeting the prescribed doctor-patient ratio, they then said, look, the problem is the way healthcare is financed. In many countries, which is worse in South Africa, healthcare is financed in favor of the rich, not the poor. It's financed in favor of the rich, and that's why we'll have a problem with health workforce on the public side. What am I talking about? Today, honorable members, the World Organization has recommended that if a country spends 5% of its its GDP, not budget, this is not a budget, because the wealth of the country is not controlled by the budget only. They talk about the GDP and say all countries must do that, so that citizens must live better life. They said 5% of the GDP on health, you are likely to have a good healthcare system, employ doctors, put up buildings, don't have overcrowding, etc., etc. In South Africa, we are already at 8.5%, which is 8.5% of the GDP is what? Is 750 billion rand. 570 rather. 570, pardon me, please. 570 billion rand is what is the amount of money spent on health in South Africa. More than 500 billion rand. There are not many countries which are at this level. European countries are at 9%, so we're not far from them. So what's our problem? People here mention inefficiency, corruption, mismanagement, etc. I'm not going to challenge those things because they happen, but they leave the big thing, the biggest elephant in the room, that this huge amount of 570 billion rand, how it is spent is that 51% goes to only 14% of the population, and the remaining 49% must go to 86% of the population, who are mostly black, I must state, who are mostly black, because in this 14% of the population who are spending a whooping 51% of healthcare expenditure through medical aids, in them, it represents only 10% of blacks. That means for medical aids, having been there for the past 50 years, up to now, they cover only 10% of the black population. In the white population, they cover 72%. That's why people are fighting NHI. We are fighting here for the right of our people to equality, that you can't have only 10% of a huge black population spending only 49% of the total expenditure, and have 14% of the population in which covers 72% of the white population, spending this 51%. It can be. There will be overcrowding, of course, and it will always be there. What do I say? If I go to a private hospital, I'm not going to name it today because I'm not fighting it, which has got 56 gynecologists alone there because there's a lot of money there. It's part of this 51% of the expenditure. 56 gynecologists in one private hospital. It's more than the total number of gynecologists in the whole of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and Northwest, all added together. One private clinic has got more people than them because the money is going there. Yesterday, I gave you a challenge, and I'm still giving it, that this 51% of total healthcare expenditure, which people insist is private, which is not, 70 billion of it come from the fiscus in the form of subsidies of everybody who's working for the state, who's on medical aid, starting with members of parliament, judges, teachers, police, and everybody who's working for the state, who's in the public service, who draw their check from the fiscus. They are entitled to 70 billion rand. Do you know how much you can do with that amount?
Honorable
Then,
your time has expired. You can finish your sentence, please.
okay, then there are people who are on medical aid, those who work for everybody. They get 33% tax credits. That's 103 billion. And you come here, Honorable Clerk, and complain to me about 28 million for adverts of NHR.
But
I'm
you are the
advertising
minister.
it
You are the
because there is-
minister. Honorable, you are the minister. You've told us these facts. We support you, but
Honorable Montana, you have to wait.
But the minister is
Honorable
repeating what he
Montana,
has told
you
us. We
can
support him. He
talking.
must tell us how do we solve this problem.
Honorable
I
Montana,
put it on the table
please.
that we need
Don't be
NHI
chaotic
so that
there.
there is equity,
Allow Minister to
so
respond.
that there is equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We move now to proceed now to the last speaker of the debate, Action SA, Honorable Dr. Letlape. Dr. Letlape?
I will close for him.
Pardon, I couldn't hear. Honorable Letlape?
It was not him, Honorable Chair. Somebody was just making a statement about the situation.
Thank you, I've heard, yeah. I'm calling on Honorable Letlape as the last speaker.
Honorable Chair, I'm just calling him quickly to see if he's maybe stepped away from the computer, but I can't get hold of him.
Thank you.
Let's give a few minutes, Chair.
I'll tell I will tell. Honorable Chair.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
Members, this is not an open
Let's move
discussion.
on, Chair.
Please put up your hand if you want to raise a point of order.
We
Thank
can't
you
wait
very
for
much.
one people. We can't wait for one people.
Honorable Chair,
Honorable Little.
Dr. He has got some trouble with technology. He can hear you, but we can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair. I had technology failure. I thought there was an element
Thank
of
you very much,
sabotage.
Doctor. You can.
Okay, thank you. I think for me, I just want members to understand that we have a crisis. And just to correct a few things, you become a fully qualified doctor after internship, not after community service. Community service is to keep the newly qualified doctors in community service. There is no requirement post-community service, but there's a need. How do we fund the need? There's a Tswana saying that says, Renale Rona, which means we are with us. And that's what the people of South Africa need. They don't need us to be with them when we are in a separate medical aid. They need us to be with them in solidarity where they are. So I'm going to put a challenge to all members that notwithstanding whatever challenges we have, PARMED and medical aids, as the minister has adequately espoused, is part of the problem. We can, on a matter of conscience, give up PARMED. So I'd like to inform members and invite them. Ever since I've been an MP, I've not signed that form, and I will not take benefits from PARMED. I am a conscientious objector to being depleted, and I will urge members of parliament to join me so that we can reform. And to say that to the minister, when we talk about national health, we need to ensure that we're talking about rearranging that 570 billion rands for the benefit of all South Africans without putting more money into the system until we've sorted out all the ills.
Agreed.
When we talk about PARMED, all of us would then have the choice to join a medical aid of your choice. I'm not at a point where I'm saying to ministers, members of parliament, don't have cover. That's your choice. But to be in PARMED, when you are the lawmaker, that is not acceptable. You can go into GEMS under the current Medical Schemes Act, but the issue of having our own act for our own care is not acceptable. So I'm asking us to ensure that.
Just finish your sentence, please.
I'm urging us to ensure that on Wednesday, the Minister of Finance funds the urgent need of employment of frontline healthcare professionals. I thank you, Chair.
You are Discovery Medical Aid.
Thank you
Oh,
very
well
much.
supported, Dr. Letlape, well supported. Thank you.
That concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.
Dr.